Dunn and Dunn identified that there are environmental elements that are going to contribute to an individualized learning style. And environmental is going to refer to the immediate instructional environment. Does the student prefer to learn in quiet, with music, or with noise? How much light do they need? What temperature is their environment? And even their seating preference. So for many years, educators believed that extra stimuli was important to the learner, and even that an open learning concept was essential. This goes to sound. Do you remember when you had an open concept for a classroom? Classrooms were often built in pods and they had no walls between them. And this created echoing and excessive noise. The belief at the time was that individuals who needed less noise would simply block it out. Dunn and Dunn, however, identified that individuals have preferences for sound on a spectrum of a lot of noise to complete silence. Take a moment to ponder your preference. When you read, do you prefer silence? When you're alone, do you quickly turn on a television or music, a podcast, just to drown out the silence? Think of what your environment looks like when you have a major project to complete, a written project in particular. Will you seek out a quiet place, or will you take the time to find a corner somewhere that you can hide in silence? Now that you have identified your preference, what do you think the preference is of someone close to you, your spouse, your office mate, your boss, or even your best friend? So interestingly, light is actually the factor with the least amount of preference for individuals. There is research that suggests that light is more important as individuals age. Some individuals will even be more light needy than others, requiring brighter lights and dimmer lights. Motivation is also a contributor when it comes to light. As individuals are highly motivated to learn or read, they're going to endure conditions with great light and little light. For instance, Malcolm X, he shared his experience of his desire to read despite a lack of light. He says, quote, "At 1 hour intervals, the night guards passed every room. Each time I heard the approaching footsteps, I jumped into bed and feigned asleep. But as soon as the guard passed, I jumped out of bed onto the floor of the jailhouse area where the light glowed, and I could read for another 58 minutes. That went on until 3 or 4 every morning." Unquote. So despite light being the best or the least stimuli preference, individuals will share that light has effects on being lethargy or making them uncomfortable, tense, anxiety, and even apathy. There are even reports of light being an energizing effect. There have also been many studies, especially recently within the rise of technology and screen usage, on the varying effects of differing lights, such as blue lights versus yellow lights. Temperature is an interesting stimulus to the environmental element. Have you ever been in a room and felt excessively cold or hot while the person next to you had the opposite feeling? Or have you had someone complain about wearing too many layers while you wished you had another layer? Individual reactions to temperature are unique, and the responses are unique, and it varies. So think for a moment about how the warm weather will feel to you in the spring, but the same temperature in the fall will feel cold because you just endured the warmer weather throughout the summer. The difficult piece for educators is finding a temperature that will meet the needs of all students. There will not be a perfect setting. You are not going to meet the needs of all of your students within a confined location. The best option is to let students migrate to the location of the classroom that's best for them. For instance, if they prefer heat, they may prefer to sit by the windows where the sun beats in. Or if they need cooler weather, they may prefer to sit next to the air conditioning vent. Think about your best temperature point for learning, and at what temperature do you achieve the most optimal learning? Lastly comes design, and this is a fascinating component. It's about the which way you study and which you are most comfortable with. It's that simple. But it's complicated in that design can change from time of day to activities to age to health and many other attributes. So when thinking about design, ponder a moment when you saw someone reading or studying in a strange place or sitting in a strange manner. I once witnessed a teenage student sitting cross-legged on the floor, and they leaned completely in half to write on a piece of paper that was on the floor in front of them. They did their entire homework assignment bit in half in such a manner for nearly 30 minutes. Now, compare that to another student or individual who needs to sit at a desk to study. Maybe the student prefers to be laying down. There are all kinds of options. So the spectrum for design gravitates from an informal design to a formal design. Do you learn best in a more formal manner than an informal manner? Does your preference change from activity to activity or day to day or even the time of day? Knowing all of this information regarding environmental elements is going to help you to create the optimal learning environment for yourself and others. So take a moment, gather the information, compile it in one place. This preference then is going to be helpful as you work with others and recognize and acknowledges the differences between your preferences and theirs.